Okay, hello, welcome. This is the Cisco Ethical Hacker course. Good enough, we're in module 2. So if you're new on the channel, this series started with Introduction to Ethical Hacking and Pen Testing. We're going through 10 modules, and right now we're in module 2. So if you're new, you can subscribe to the channel. We're also going to be going on a live stream to walk through all of the labs, about 20 labs thereabouts. So in module 1, we talked about ethical hacking and pen testing, understanding the difference between ethical hacking and pen testing, understand the different ways, different methodologies for that. In the lab session, in the live stream, we're also going to look at how do we build our own lab. In module 2, I'm going to be looking at planning and scoping a penetration testing. So I talked about in the introduction where I said a penetration testing is just like a project, a cybersecurity project. And if you're going to do that kind of project, how are you going to be planning? How are you going to be scoping? How do you look at different risks, different governance, different ways of managing different things? And how do you look at some of those compliance concepts? Those are the kind of things we'll be considering. I'm also going to look at the ethical hacker mindset. What the kind of mindset you should have if you're going to perform penetration tests and ethical hacking. So in module 2, that's what we're going to be considering right away. Now, understand that many things can go wrong, right? So it's very important that you plan. So in cybersecurity project management, we normally say if you intend to run a project, you first plan the project, or rather before you plan the project, you first initiate, right? The first thing you do is to initiate. Then you plan the project. Then you execute. Then you do what we call monitoring and control. Then you close. So let me explain this project management principle as it regards a cybersecurity project as pen testing. So the idea is that you don't just start performing pen testing. No, it doesn't work that way. The very first thing you have to do, you have to initiate the project. So your client is going to tell you, okay, we have some websites that we have some softwares, we have some application, right? Or we have a network infrastructure we want you to check for us. Or we have some cloud apps, right? Either deployed or maybe storage, maybe in some buckets, or we have some container services running. Or maybe we have some endpoint devices. That's to say, these are all methodologies, these are all scopes, these are all different scopes. So your client have to initiate that and say, okay, this is what I want to do. So whatever your client in your worksheets, in your pen test guide, on your pen test documentation, whatever your client have indicated that he wants to test, the next thing you now do is to start planning. And in planning, you define things like risks, things like scopes, things like resources that you're going to need. You define all of those things at this level, right? It's only when you've defined all of these, part of your resources, you cannot be able to come up with budget, right? So if you don't understand your scope, you can't talk about what the risk is going to be, what the different scope is going to be, how many persons am I going to be needing for the test. The same thing with time management. So how long is it going to take me and all of that. So it's only when you've done all of this, then you can now come up with, okay, this is going to cost me so amount, this is going to cost me so amount. Then once this is approved and your clients have signed off, then you start executing the project. And when you start executing the project, you have to concurrently be doing monitoring and control. So monitoring and control, you want to be checking all the things you planned out and the client have signed off to do. Are you actually doing them? Then the client must sign off. So if the client does not sign off and say, we are done, this pen testing project is not done yet. So that's why we say that if you do not scope and plan the pen testing project appropriately, a lot of things are going to go wrong. So you might have things like scope creep, So in the sense that the client says, at the initial maybe phone call, the client says, okay, we have some website we want to test. And it gave you, let's say, just one link, one website. Maybe it's a software that have an e-commerce project and the rest, or you didn't know that there is some sections of the website, or they have another URL that is an employee management system. You didn't know that they have another software that's deployed in the cloud. You didn't know that, okay, they have is network, that there's a server and whatever. So you see that in your mind or in your team's mind, you intended to just do pen testing for one website. But before you start executing, if you don't plan out all of this stuff, you're going to go in a big mess. So of course, if you are budgeting, let's say $1,500 for the project, by the time you start seeing additional scope, this budget is going to shoot to, let's say, 3K. And what happens? You're going to have a lot of issues. So that's why it's very important for you to understand these principles. You can check the channel. I have a complete project management playlist based on the PMI standard. You can go through it. It's around the 6 parts series. You can go through it to understand, help you to understand project management principle. And it's very, very applicable in pen testing. So scoping is very important. Then you also need to look at laws. You also need to look at laws. Laws are very crucial. Laws are very important. So you don't just start like doing your pen testing without looking at some of the legal concepts, without looking at some of the local laws, without looking at some of the things that you need to conform to. Because if you don't conform to all of those things, you can get in the bad books. Of course, we're also going to look at the importance of good planning, importance of scoping. Then we'll look at some very, very key legal concepts. Okay, some of the things we're going to learn, we've already talked about them, the mindset, scoping, GRC, those are the things we're going to be talking about. So let's first look at contrasting governance, risks, and compliance, because when you're trying to do pen testing, you need to put most of these things in your mind. Okay, I think there are some points here I need to make. Okay, let me just move to the next thing. Key concepts you must address in understanding how to plan your preparation phase. One thing you want to do is to make sure that you have a target audience, right? So in preparation, target audience, rules of engagement, how are you going to communicate? So in a project, when you're trying to plan your communication, you're going to ask yourself, am I going to have informal means of communication? Am I going to have formal means of communication? How am I going to communicate? Is it over the phone? Is it via chats? Is it via just a stop by or whatever? Or am I going to use emails? Am I going to use documentations, printouts? So you have to, in the plan, say how communication is going to be done. If you're going to do a pen testing that's going to last for 30 days, the question is going to be, how are you going to communicate? Is it weekends? Is it every weekend? So that means you're going to communicate 4 times during the period of the pen test. So if it is already in the plan that communication is 4 times, that is every weekend on a Saturday, everybody's going to be looking up to Saturday for our communication. And if something goes wrong or we cannot get to the team or there are some things we have issues with, how do we escalate? Who do we talk to? There's a server that is not accessible or there's a server that is down and we need to actually do pen testing on it. Who do we speak to? Or there's a URL that we were given at the planning stage, but right now that URL is not available. Maybe the domain name is expired. There is a cloud application that we've deployed and some services are running, or maybe we don't have access, or they give us some test credentials to be able to test. And some of those test credentials are not working. So who do we speak to? So those things have to be understood. You need to plan those things ahead of time. So of course, you need to have like an overall budget for the engagement. You need to understand disclaimers, technical constraints, and of course, all the resources that you're going to need to run your pen testing. So all of these things needs to be done ahead of time. Okay, so let's look at regulatory compliance and consideration. So it's very important that you must be conversant with those regulations around the domain where you are testing for. Take, for instance, for somebody that is going to be testing payment systems, so you should be conversant with NDPR. If you're in Nigeria, if you're elsewhere, anywhere in the world, your country must have done compliance for GDPR, that General Data Protection Regulation, PCI DSS. So you must be complying with the payment card industry guidelines. So because you're doing something that has to do with payment. So we're going to look at some of those regulations. So depending on what you're trying to test on or what you're trying to check compliance for, you should be conversant with those regulations. So very, very critical, because in pen testing, we say security audit, we say vulnerability assessment, then we say pen test, right? So at times, at this point, we say VAPT. So this checks standards, this checks guidelines, right? You check your IT infrastructure against this. So at vulnerability assessment, you try to see if there are loopholes, if there are flaws, if are there things we have within our system that is not conforming to the standard. Then at pen testing, all of those things we saw as flaws, we want to see if we can actually hack them, if we can actually get in. So the ones we can, we tick we can. The ones we cannot, we say, okay, we are good to go. Right? So very key and very important. Okay, so these are some of the regulations you should be conversant with. For those of us that are into security, you want to do GRC, you want to do pen testing, you want to do vulnerability assessment. These regulations are very key. So I've mentioned some of them. You have GDPR, you have HIPAA, you have PCI DSS. You can look at them. Each of them have their sectors, have their meanings, and have why they are very important. Take, for instance, if you're going to do anything that has to do with data, so it then means that you should be looking at GDPR. It's a whole document that you should look up, get a PDF, study it. You're going to see that a lot of countries have adapted this regulation. So who is going to hold data? Who is data controller? Who is going to adapt data? Who is going to edit data? Who is going to transfer data? Who is going to store data? All of the security concerns that hovers around that is all covered in GDPR. Then, of course, HIPAA, so this is a US regulation. This has to do with healthcare. Then for any company, Paystack, MasterCard, Verve, Visa, any PayPal, 2Checkouts, Flutterwave, all of these companies, M-Pesa, any company that have to do anything that will relate to finance. So most of the times they will have to comply with this, or the platform they are piggybacking on, that they are relying on, we have to comply with this. So also you have FISMA, you have GLBA, you have NIST. NIST is a very, very, of course, US based, but it's a very robust standard. They have an Excel sheet. Maybe as time permits me in the channel, I'm also going to look at some of these regulations, just one after the other. Look at them, look at their documentation, look at this sheet if you're going to do, let's say, vulnerability assessment, or if you're going to be doing GRC on each of them, how do you approach them? So don't forget to ask questions in the comment section if you have any. Subscribe so that once I'm running this series, you'll get notified. And also, if you intend to run through any of our internship, either our data internship, data engineering internship, our cybersecurity internship, or you want to do our cloud solutions architects, either AWS or Google, as partners, you can also indicate either in the comment section, or you could use the contact button and reach out to us. So NIST, very critical, very important. So these have quite a lot of things. And if you want to provide cybersecurity services and if you don't know NIST, it then means that you've not started, because these have everything that have to do with cybersecurity services, cybersecurity software, cybersecurity managed services. When it comes to you either trying to control, trying to defend, trying to like mitigate risks and all of that, you have that robustly covered in the NIST cybersecurity framework. And at times, if you want to do testing for organizations, you can just pick up any of the framework and check if they conform to those standards and tick all of the box one after the other. So you also have COPA, you have CCPA, you have CISA, you have ISO IEC 27001. So this has to do with information security information security management system. So this is also very robust. There's certification for this, and either an auditor or an implementer. Now, aside all of these global frameworks, guidelines, standards, you also want to look at your own country. Depending on the country where you are, you want to look at what kind of laws, what kind of regulations do your country have when it comes to, so you can look at for your country. Let's assume you're in Ghana, for instance, or you're in Cyprus, or you're in Nigeria, or you're in Canada. You can just check up on Google and say Ghana cybersecurity laws, right? You can say Ghana or whatever country you are, you can say data protection laws. Same thing applies to Nigeria, Cyprus, UK, any country. Most countries have adapted most of these global regulations to what applies to their country, right? So you want to look at those local regulations and see how you can make sure that you test them against your infrastructure. Now, there's going to be some constraints in the sense that things that we cannot actually cater for, things that we might be deficient on. So you have certain areas of technology that cannot be tested due to operational limitations. Like, take for instance, if you have a server that is up and running, that is the database-driven service, it might not be possible for you to run an SQL injection attack on it, because you might corrupt, you might bring it down. Another way to do this is to have like a production environment. So let me just explain. So let's say you have a website. The name of the website is www.ctlhub.africa. So that's the name of the website. So let's assume this is an employee portal. So it has a front-end website and it has a database, right? So if it has a front-end content and have a relational database, what it means is that if I try, of course, you have several databases. I will not want to go into that. So if you try to run SQL commands, injection attacks on this site, if this database goes down, what will happen is that employees are not able to access this website. So you might not be able to do some of those tests. Now, one way to do this test is to replicate this website on its test server. Let's say push it to something server.africa, whatever. Replicate the entire application here and move it to this place and do all your testing here. So whatever learnings, whatever reports you get from doing vulnerability assessment and pen testing here, you cannot implement and correct on this production environment. So this is what we call a production environment. This is what we call a development. At times we call it a test or a sandbox environment. So you don't want to, at times you might be limited, especially if you have a very short time to run this test. Of course, this is going to be off the hooks. You will not be able to do this testing. But if you have enough of time, you can replicate this on a development environment. So this is going to be running employees, or if it's an e-commerce portal or whatever, they can keep using the application while you can now run all your tests in a development environment. So this is one way to actually go and fix this limitation, right? Then you have skill sets. So you see, cybersecurity is an ever-evolving field. So I would normally tell cybersecurity analysts to try to learn programming, to sharpen their skills in networking, to sharpen their cloud skills, right? These are very, very crucial skill sets. Because if the application you are deploying is based on, and that's why also at times pen testing, it's not really like a one-man game. It's not, if you want to do just If you just want to run pen testing as just one person, you're going to spend quite a lot of time because your checklist is quite huge. On the channel, with time, as time permits me, I'm also going to be running some records on the different testing frameworks and the sheets and how to approach pen testing, like more or less like a detailed guide. So you might have limitation in skills, and so that's one thing you should consider. And of course, known exploit. When we say known exploit, what do we mean? We actually mean that for every known application, for every programming language, for every framework, for every type of network, for every kind of IT systems you have, IoT devices, they are known exploits, right? For every kind of databases, they are known exploits. So your known exploits, you're going to be testing against your known exploits. So at times, you might not have knowledge of some of those non-exploits, or those non-exploits might not be so rampant. So it might be difficult for you to approach them. So it's going to be with a lot of maybe automated testing. You might be limited in trying to do some manual testing, and your experience is going to also count. So this can also be a constraint. So you have quite a lot of other constraints. Understand that you're able to communicate any technical constraints that you have. And let us look at legal concepts. So if you're trying to do pen testing, there are a few things you should be very, very conversant with. Understand that you need to understand, yes, understand that you need to understand what is SLA. So SLA is service level agreement. Most persons that do business development or write proposals and the rest, you will be conversant with what is an SLA. So you just, what is the minimum that we've agreed we should do in terms of quality, in terms of time, in terms of cost for the pen testing? That's what an SLA means. So you don't go against our SLA. If we say, okay, this pen testing is going to last for 30 days, once you are still testing after 30 days, you are going against our SLA, right? And we might have issues, right? We might have issues, we might be sued, we might have deductions in our amount. We might imagine we have a framework, a timeline for running this pen testing, and everything is on hold for that purpose. And by the time you're extending after 30 days, you're going to have quite a lot of issues. You might have downtime, all of that. Then confidentiality, understand that when you're doing pen testing, you're not going to say, okay, I did pen testing for client A, client B, client C. This is what I did, this is what I found out. Right? So confidentiality is very, very crucial. So if you find passwords, sensitive data, you should not disclose them. You should inform the client when you see some things that are very proprietary, things that are very confidential. You should do well to inform the client. Statement of work have to do with the scope. What do we intend to do in detail? So timelines, when are you going to report? What's the scope of work you're going to do? What's the location? Like our time we're trying to do a pen test for an organization. So as much as time of the day, if it's a server, for instance, and you have 1,000 persons connected to that server, so you're going to have peak periods, you're going to have off-peak periods. And if you're going to have peak and off-peak periods, so your best bet to work is at off-peak periods, or you're going to designate a particular time when people are not going to be connected to that particular server. Or if you're running a load balancer, you can now push traffic to another server or another system, and then you can do testing at other, maybe one, or the idea I gave you before where you can push your live system to a development environment and you do your testing. So all of that has to be considered, because see, pen testing is like trying to check, it's like trying to scatter something, trying to mess up with something, trying to like pilfer something, like a hacker would do. So if you don't plan properly, then there's going to be issues. Then payment schedule, how should payment should be done? Should it be 50-50? Should it be 70-30? Should it be 40-40-20? How should you break the payment? Or should it be payment before delivery, or should it be after delivery, and all of that? Then, of course, you have master service agreement. So this is going to be just a document that states what we will normally use for most of our engagement, so that anytime we want to do the next engagement, we just pick up that and maybe modify it and we are good to go. Then you have an NDA. So NDA is very important. So for an NDA, it's just saying, please don't say anything that has happened here elsewhere. That's what an NDA is. So it's just a legal document between you and the company that have hired you, and it's saying confidential material, all the knowledge, information, you shouldn't disclose it, right? It should be kept confidential. And you have different types. You have the unilateral, the bilateral, and the multilateral. For multilateral, for instance, it involves 3 or more parties. So for bilateral, just 2-way. For unilateral, just one party means of not disclosing that information. Okay, let's look at contracts. So this is just a document that states the work that should be done and, of course, the amount. And understand that your customer might also engage the legal department, or they might have a lawyer that's doing that. And it's very important for you to have some kind of advice if you're not very experienced, so that you don't get into issues. And that's why later on we're going to look at disclaimers. So in disclaimer, we're trying to say we are not liable for so and so. So you must spell that out if you don't want to be liable. And one of the ways you can do this is that for every document and whatever, you want to give it to your lawyer to look at, and so that you are sure that nothing goes wrong from your end. So disclaimers. So you might want to add disclaimers to your pre-engagement. So things like, okay, if you find something, no softwares, hardware, technology is immune to security vulnerabilities. So no matter how much more security testing is conducted, you might still have what we call residual risks. In the channel, I started the series on threat management. I'm not done with that series yet. I think most of the concepts here, you have them in that series. Or you can also check the cyber ops, see why that's cyber ops. The Cisco Cyber Ops playlist on the channel. We talked about different types of risks, different types of documentations. Okay, let's look at, there's a lab we're going to be considering in the live stream, compliance requirements and local restrictions. So if you are watching this video later on, you could check the live streams. You're going to find that we're going to walk through this lab session. So the live stream is going to be a live session where we're going to go through the modules. So scoping and organizational or customer requirements. So it's very important that you scope properly. So I think I've emphasized this very, very well all through module 1, module 2, and at this particular point in time. You have several frameworks. In module 1, we talked about ethical hacking and pen testing. Then we looked at several methodologies. So you have the PTES, you have the OSTM, you have the ISSAF, you have the NIST, you have the OWASP. So if you ask me, for instance, you should be looking at OWASP and NIST. Those are very, very robust frameworks. So you could ignore the rest too. They're just like standards. Some of them are a little bit old. But for NIST and OWASP, and if you are going to be doing mobile pen testing, you should look at the mobile security framework, right? So these are standards. It will help you know what to test, right? So in this section of the course, we're going to look at rules of engagement, scope asset list, which I've explained in most section of the previous module, and how do you validate scope of an engagement. A validation, we mean, how do you sign off? Because the client must sign off what he or she wants you to do. So always have a rule of engagement document. So this is what it looks like. So we're going to be testing 3 times for 3 weeks. You could use a Gantt chart. So Gantt chart is like a project management document that looks like this. Okay, no need to draw. Let me just open it. Gantt chart. So it just spells out, the Gantt chart just spells out, okay, week 1, I'm going to be doing this. Week 2, I'm going to be doing this. Week 3, I'm going to be doing this. Week 4, I'm going to be doing this. Week 5, I'm going to be doing this. It makes it very, very clear for everybody. Take, for instance, you say, okay, in week 1, so let's say this is, okay, this is week 1, right? This is, okay, this is first quarter. This is second quarter, this is third quarter. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to be doing planning. We're going to be doing scoping. We're going to be doing testing. Maybe testing is going to last this time, this time, this time. Yeah, we're going to be doing closing. So you just like, so this is what you call your Gantt chart after a man called Gantt something. So, of course, who is going to be responsible for it? Right? Who is responsible for each of those items, or the team that's responsible for it, how long is it going to last, and all of that. So that's what you call a Gantt chart. So you could use Excel to draw a Gantt chart. You could use Microsoft Project, or you could use Primavera, or you could use a sketch, something to just represent the sequence of events and how things are actually going to be. Then the timeline, your final report, what controls are you checking? Do you have IPS, IDS, DLPs? What network range are you going to be testing? So you need to spell that out. Types of tests that you should that should be allowed. Where should they be allowed? Because if there are some critical stuffs that if they go down, we are going to incur quite huge cost. Then you don't want such kind of don't want to incur such kind of cost. Okay, yeah, so we have it here. This is what the Gantt chart looks like. So we can say, okay, day 1, we're going to do some pre-engagement talk, tasks, for 6 days between this day to this particular. Okay, this is going to cost maybe 6 days or so. Then pen testing for app 1, for app 2, for report delivery, knowledge transfer. So this is where we're going to be doing some training, right? So when you do pen testing, it comes with post-training, at times post-assessment, presentation, and reporting. So you don't come hack an infrastructure and you run away. No, it doesn't happen that way. When you're done with your job, you have to say, okay, this is what I found out. This is what I found out. This is what we should do well. This is what we did well. This is how we did well. This is where we should be improving on. These are the things we need to fix as soon as possible. This is what we can do maybe at a later date. We need to change maybe this service provider. You're going to have recommendations. You're going to have a report. And most of the times you're going to have training, right? Then you're going to have in your recommendations, you're going to have a lot of advisory. So you want to recommend it. When next should you have a test? Okay, so let's look at target list. I've mentioned this. So the things you want to test actually, whether your website, network, cloud application, IP addresses, databases, what do you want to test? Right? So these are different ways or different standards in terms of applications that are connecting or piggybacking on other applications. So that's why I always advise students that want to do pen testing, take your time and enroll for any of our programming courses, front end, back end, or learn Python, learn PHP, learn JavaScript, learn any programming language. It's going to help you if you intend to go into web security, for instance. So these are just standard. This is SOAP, this is Swagger, this is WSDL, this is GraphQL, and this is WDL. These are ways normally an application can piggyback or connect to another application through API supports. So you have Swagger. These are just different standards. You have WSDL, you have GraphQL, and you have WDL, right? Okay, is there anything I've not mentioned? So validating of scope. You remember I said earlier on that you initiate, you plan, you execute, you monitor and control, you what's it called? You close the project, the pen testing project. Now, before you start executing, you need to validate your scope. You need to, like, the client need to say, okay, after your meetings, and these are the things I want to test, the client needs to sign off on those items. And that's what you call validating of scope. Right? So this is the first step in validating the scope of an engagement, is to question the client and review contract. You must understand that the target audience, who the target audience is for the penetration testing report. You should understand the subjects, who the persons are that are going to be interacting with those objects or interacting with the IT infrastructure, the business unit or department, or any other entity that will be assessed by such a penetration testing engagement. So you really want to understand everything that's going to be happening. Then, so this is what a stakeholder management document looks like. So this is who you are going to be contacting with respect to your test. If something goes wrong or you want to inform somebody, or let's say you're trying to do some tests and something goes bad, who should you speak to? So you should have that, and it should be properly documented. So it's not when you're doing a testing and something goes bad, you now start trying to call and say, okay, something went wrong. Who do I call? No. All of these things are things you do before you start testing, right? So clients may ask questions like, how do I explain the overall cost of the penetration testing to my boss? So this is what you should have. You should have a properly documented document that should tell, like, your codes, the document. Maybe when we are running through the live labs, I might pull out some sample documents to, like, help you explain what a quotation for a pen testing is and what a scope of work for a pen testing can look like. How do I build a penetration testing? How do I build in penetration testing as a success factor, right? So how do we know that, or how do we tell that, okay, this made sense to the organization overall? Because most of the times organizations don't want to spend certain amount of money thinking that, okay, maybe it's just a bogus spending. But one thing you should understand is that just like business people are going to do return on investment, security persons are going to do security return on investment. So you put in cash dollar, it gives you more cash, right? But times when you do a pen testing, right, a VAPT, you don't necessarily see the cash return. But this security that you've implemented is going to return back in things like uptime, good security, right? So if we are hacked, like, right, we might lose our customers, we might have bad brand perception. So many things might go wrong that will overall reduce our finance, right? So that's why you should be able to explain this concept to your client. If you're not able to explain the concept to the clients, it might be difficult for them to calculate or tell what the benefit of the pen testing is going to be. So other things like pricing, other things like budgets, other things like ROI, you should be able to tell these items. So you can also have a timeline for this now, in 1 year time, in what's it called, in 3 years time. So 1,000 systems, this availability found, when we did the second pen test, when we did the third pen test. So as the year goes by, we should always have proper documentation of all the things that we found out. And this is going to help us to plan future engagement. Okay, so in trying to do pen testing, you can have different environments. So you have what we call the known and unknown environment. So I've explained this before. In this environment, you're not given so much details about what you're testing. For known environment, you're given details like the website link, the IP address, and all of that. So that's the difference between the known environment and the unknown environment. So of course, like I said earlier on, a known environment is going to cost less in terms of penetration testing cost. And a known environment is like a black box text. It's going to be pretty much more expensive. So always make sure that you create an agreement and you have a proper mindset. Maintain professionalism, make sure that you have integrity. You don't go against the things that you have planned out. If not, you might get into the wrong book. You might have issues. Okay, there's a lab. We're going to also be looking at personal code of conduct. What should be your outlook? What should be your guideline when you're trying to do pen testing? So that's why it's called ethical hacking. It's not called hacking. The difference is that for ethical hacking, your goal is to try to hack to protect. For hacking, you are hacking to cause system malfunction. Okay, that's going to be all for Module 2. Thank you very much for going through the series. In Module 3, we are going to be looking at information gathering and vulnerability scanning. So we're getting into the stage where we start trying to do vulnerability assessment. If you have questions, you could ask, and don't forget to like or share to as many persons that want to go through this ethical hacker series. See you in Module 3.